I'm going to call this meeting to order, the time being 12:02. This is the special meeting of the City Commission of Rio Grande City, today being Tuesday, December the 3rd, 2024. This time, I'm going to ask Commissioner Olivares to lead us in the invocation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Dear Lord, we thank you for allowing us to gather here today. And we pray for a clear mind and clear heart as we make decisions that affect our city. We ask these things in thy name. Amen.
Amen. And at this time, I'm going to ask that everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now to the Texas flag, please.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Moving forward to item 1B, which is the roll call. Commissioner Ben de Leon? Present. Commissioner Ediel Barrera? Present. Mayor present. Commissioner Olivares?
Present.
Commissioner Eudolio Barrera?
Present.
At this time, I'm going to find that we have a quorum to move forward with today's meeting, and we're moving forward to item number 2, which is personnel. A, discussion and possible action regarding the suspension of Police Chief Noe Castillo pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074. Before we entertain a motion on this matter, I'm going to suggest that we adjourn for a few minutes.
To executive session?
I'm sorry?
To executive session?
No.
Okay.
At this time, Mr. Castillo is not present, and I want to find out for sure whether or not he's going to be here. We have asked him to be here. We have summoned him to appear as a subordinate of the commission and to address his matter. I see that for the record that Mr. Castillo is not present here. So at this time, I'm going to be recommending that we adjourn for about 10-15 minutes to get a final answer as to whether or not Mr. Castillo is going to be present here. So with that in mind, does anybody have a motion?
I move motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I second.
The motion has been seconded.
It's a temporary adjournment.
It's going to be a temporary adjournment. It's going to be only for 10 to 15 minutes. Let's make it 15 minutes. All of those in favor for adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So time being is 12:05. We shall resume at 12:20. This time, the time being 12:20, we're gonna reconvene with our meeting scheduled for today, which is December the 3rd, 2024. I'm gonna find that we do have quorum. The same commissioners that were present earlier remain to be present here today, so we have a quorum to go forward. We're gonna move to item 2A, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the suspension of Police Chief Noe Castillo pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074. Do we have a motion for this item?
I move motion as presented on the agenda 2A.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I second the motion.
The motion has been seconded. The item is ripe for discussion at this time. And I'd like to begin this discussion by indicating to the public that this request that we have here, that we're set for here today, is being conducted pursuant to the request of Mr. Noe Castillo. Through his attorney, he requested that there was a public hearing, that any issues regarding his employment were addressed openly to the public and not in executive session. So here we are today. And for the record, ma'am, Ms. Montemayor, is Mr. Noe Castillo present here today?
No.
Okay. Mr. Noe Castillo is not present to address the commission regarding his employment contract and employment with the city. Be it known to the public and to the community that Mr. Noe Castillo has been asked to be present here today. He has been summoned to be here, and he has refused to be here today to address the commission regarding the issues that we have pending on this matter.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I know you use the term public hearing. Is there a difference between a special meeting, which this is labeled, and a public hearing?
I'm sorry.
Is there a difference between a special meeting and a public hearing?
Not necessarily. The point being is that we're addressing this item open to the public. It's not necessarily a public hearing, right? But it is an agenda item that's being discussed openly, an item that should have been discussed in executive session, but pursuant to Mr. Castillo's request, we're doing openly to the public. Pursuant to the terms of the contract with Mr. Noe Castillo, one of the causes for termination of employment is if an employee, or Mr. Castillo in this case, is being insubordinate. Mr. Castillo has been asked to be here. Be it known that that is a cause for insubordination for not showing up here to address the commission. He remains the chief of police. He remains employed. Is that correct?
That's correct. With pay. With pay.
I'm sorry?
With pay.
Currently, he had been suspended with pay, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Technically, he remains an employee of the
Yes.
city?
Yes, it is.
He remains an employee. He has failed to appear. And to start the substance of this discussion, it's in regards to water loss that we have been receiving. Water loss that the city had been losing throughout the years. And Mr. Milan, can you please fill us out as to what has been going on since 2020, 2021 in terms of the water loss issue that we have?
Yes, we have, through an internal investigation, we have discovered that some accounts have major issues with water usage and water loss, obviously. With that, some of these charges for water and sewer pro rata obviously have been miscalculated for years, triggering the water loss of over 40%, which so far in the accounts we have found out is already close to $1 million of water losses.
Okay. So it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's water that we pump from the river, right?
That is correct.
Okay, and the water that's being pumped from the river eventually gets distributed among the community, right?
Yes, sir.
It gets treated and then
Yes.
it's distributed.
It's treated and then it's distributed.
That is correct.
So technically, there's a way to have an accounting of all the water that's pumped in and that it's pumped out into the community, right?
Correct.
Okay, and throughout the years, we had found out that out of that water that had been pumped, 40% of that water was being lost, right?
Correct.
Okay, and it's also my understanding that the main reasons for the water loss could have been leakage, it could have been theft of service, or it could have been faulty meters, right?
That is correct.
Okay, and what did the recent investigation reveal that was the main culprit of the water loss?
Again, because these are mayor accounts, you have public entities which high usage. Because of the deficiencies in water meters and other, maybe possibly some of the lines, that we haven't been collecting water fees for the same matter. In other words, those accounts totaling close to $1 million together so far that we have found.
Right.
They should have been billed properly and then, collected obviously properly and of course put into the accounts, lessen the water loss.
And obviously, I think that one of the things that was under the city's control and the easiest one to target was the water meters, right?
Correct.
Okay, and I think that after you became the interim city manager, you decided to check obviously the biggest accounts to see if they were being metered correctly.
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, and is Mr. Cantu around?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon, sir. So, have you been listening to the conversation that we've been having?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and have you been working with the Public Utility Department
Yes,
in regards to water loss?
yes,
Okay. And were you also part of this investigation into trying to find out what
Yes.
was happening with the water loss?
yes, I was.
Okay. And have you been also having an accounting as to what has been the percentage of water that we have been able to recover by replacing a few meters?
An accounting, yes, what we've done is we replaced the meters and we found out what the usage should have been for, the past 3 years on some of the accounts. As an example, they were using 2 million gallons on a monthly basis. Then all of a sudden, the next billing cycle came out with a zero consumption, and nobody said anything about that. So once we figured out those accounts, we replaced the meters, and the consumption went back up to 2 million gallons, which is approximately $12,000 on some accounts per month.
And I think that one of the accounts that you were able to identify was, and most notably, was the Sheriff's Department account. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's one of them, yes.
Okay. And tell me exactly what you were able to find out about that account since 2020, 2021.
Well, again, that jailhouse was using close to 2 million gallons on a monthly basis. It went down to zero. Nobody said anything, and it
When did
remained.
that happen, sir?
That was 2021, and it remained with a zero consumption for, I believe it was 29 months, 29 consecutive months of zero consumption.
For how many months?
29 consecutive months of zero consumption. So basically, what they were being charged was just the minimum.
What was the regular amount that's charged on a day? What's the average?
Right now, we switched their meter out in, I want to say it was in August, and since then, their average monthly bill has been $12,000, close to $12,000, yes.
Okay, so $12,000 for 29 months, that was, the Sheriff's Department should have been billed approximately $12,000 per month, correct?
That's correct.
And it was billed at how much?
The minimum, I want to say, I don't remember, it was $250 or $800.
Okay, so it was billed at $250 to $800 for 29 months, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What does that add to?
12,000 is 144,000 a year. Times 2 years, that's 288
Okay.
for 2 years.
348,000 that were neglected for the last 29 months, basically, that's what's happening here, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So in one account, we lost close to $348,000 that was not billed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that was just one account.
Yes.
There was another account that was also a substantial amount, correct?
Yes.
Which one was that account?
The STC account?
Okay, and for STC, what can you tell us about that account, sir?
Pretty much the same thing. SGC I think that one had a 40 consecutive month. It wasn't at zero consumption, but it was at the bare minimum. They were using like 20,000 gallons. Once we replaced the meter, the last 2 months, there's been a consumption of 1.8 million and 2 million gallons. So
And roughly in dollar amounts? how
in
much
dollar
was that?
amount, I think their monthly bill was 16,000,
16,000?
15,000.
How many months you said? 40 what?
I think that one was close to 40 months of
40 months.
getting charged
What
the
does that
minimum
amount-
of,
what does that add up to?
$640,000 that our city was losing just because they were not checking on our biggest accounts. So if may I interrupt real quick, Mayor, just real quick, because I think we omit one very important part. And as you all started the position as our deputy city manager that we had, it was occupied by Mr. Noe Castillo.
yes.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that, and that's why we're coming up with
Okay.
these.
Yeah, and we're gonna discuss that, Commissioner. First, I wanna establish what has been the loss of the city, and then we'll get into the details as to who was
Good.
supervising the accounts. So, the third biggest account that we have,
The third biggest account is El South. They are one of our wholesales. El South has their own water supply. We provide the water for them, and they provide the water to their clients. I think they have close to 700 accounts.
okay?
On theirs, it was a faulty meter because on theirs, it had an average. Sometimes it was high, sometimes it was low, but there was a time in 2021 where I noticed that their yearly consumption for water was close to 60 million gallons. And in 2021, I think we only billed them for 6 million gallons
For 6
for the,
million?
for the whole year.
From
6
60
million.
to 6.
Yeah.
So that means 90%. Yeah.
We're collecting at 10%. And do you know for how many months that was?
That one was inconsistent. It was a couple of months where it was very low. That year, for example, was just 6 million gallons for the whole year. The following year seemed to have been reading correctly. And then the following year, this year, I think we had only billed them for like 20 million out of the whole 60 million for the year. So I think
Do you
based
have
on
an estimation as to how much water loss we had on that account?
I
The
think on
monetary
theirs,
amount?
based on my calculations, we lost close to 250,000.
How much?
250,000.
250.
Okay.
On theirs, what I did is I called El South and I had them send their consumption readings to us, and I compared what they were billing as opposed to what we were billing them. So, for example, 1 month we would bill them 800,000 gallons, and they would bill 4 million.
Oh, okay, I see.
the
they
water
knew
was all
they were
coming from
billing-
us.
They knew they were billing more than we were billing them, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before we continue, real quick, Mr. Cantu, can you explain real quick what El South water supply is and real water supply, because the community might be misinformed, because every time I receive a lot of texts like, hey, can you help me with this? And those are things that we don't have control of. Rio Grande City only provides water to a certain street. So can you explain just real quick what real water supply is, and Panque water supply and South water supply?
Well, they're basically their own water supplies. They have their own clientele. I'm not sure where the lines are to where they establish their accounts to, but basically the city provides water to the inside the city limits.
Okay.
El Tanque has their own accounts. We provide the water to them.
Okay.
In exchange, they provide the water to their customers.
Okay.
So
thank
the
you.
water's already treated when we give it to them, and they just bill it to their customers at a higher
Within
rate.
our community, our city is the one providing water to all those other mini water supplies.
Except the real water supply, I think they only take the minimum because they have their own plant now, so they only have us as a backup whenever they
Thank
need.
you.
So, Mr. Cantu, you're saying we provide, that means we sell the water to them?
We sell the water.
And then they resell it, right?
Yes, yes.
Is it the same price or at a higher price?
They resell it at a higher price.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
All right.
Mr. Cantu, on those meters, how is it that you said that, especially for the for the Talca water supply, 1 year it was correct and then another year no, and then back again?
Yeah, it was faulty meters. Basically, I mean, if you're looking at the accounts, you're gonna notice one month you bill them 4 million gallons, and then the following month somebody should have caught that, where it's, if you bill them 4 million gallons, and then the following month you bill them for 500,000, then there's gotta be a problem there, so,
And Mr. Cantu, these are only on 3 commercial accounts, correct?
yes.
Have you been replacing more meters?
We replaced 9 meters so far. I don't have the exact figures as far as to how much we've lost on those, but just on quick calculations that we did earlier this morning, I think it was close to 200,000 on the next
On the
6
other-
accounts, on the other 6
On the other
accounts.
6 account, another 200,000.
Yes.
So far you have told us that there was a 1,238,000 from the 3 accounts plus another 200,000. That's 1,438,000, close to $1.5 million of a loss since 2020, 2021?
2021,
From
basically.
2021.
Yes.
And obviously, we haven't checked the residential accounts, we haven't checked the rest of the commercial accounts. So far, it's been 9 accounts only.
9 accounts only, yes.
And in terms of the water loss, how much have we recuperated?
Just on those 3 accounts, the first 3 basic accounts, I calculated it was close to 10% of the 40% that we had on the water loss.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Cantu, who was at the time in 2021 the city manager?
The deputy city manager was the Chief Castillo.
Okay. Mr. Vilan, when did Chief Castillo become the deputy city manager?
It was November 2020.
November 2020?
Yes.
Okay. And again, just for the record, Mr. Castillo's not here to offer an explanation as to why these issues were going on and who was supposed to be supervising him and who was supposed to be taking care of these accounts.
If I can make a brief comment, Mayor.
Yes.
I've been part of the commission since December of '21, and every time that this issue was brought up, which was not very often, because what we're doing right now is we're looking at the facts that have been obtained and trying to apply them retroactively to something that was happening when Mr. Castillo was in charge.
Right.
The previous commission did not place that much emphasis on this. We did instruct them to look into it. We did instruct them to check for leaks, for all the things that you mentioned before. We even, that people may be tampering with the meters and things like that. And as a matter of fact, the one person that I remember mentioning the possibility of faulty meters was Mr. Castillo. But we kind of dismissed it because we figured that it couldn't be that all the meters were going faulty at the same time. And again, he had no knowledge, we had no knowledge as a member of the prior commission that amount of water loss was going on. I think that if we had been privy to that information, I am more than positive that actions would have been taken immediately. And I just think that we need to look at the fact that we're taking facts that have been obtained very recently and trying to apply them retroactively to hold somebody accountable whose bosses, the previous commission, were not holding him to that accountability.
And Commissioner Olivares, I'm glad that you brought up that point. And I think that you and I can agree, based on what you have told us today, that the issue was identified years ago.
We
That-
knew that there was an issue, yes.
And before we get into Mr. Castillo, but I think that what you're indicating today is that there was an issue with the water loss. You did not know how much water was being lost, right?
Right.
And in fact, that the commission was aware of it, that there was an issue with water loss, right?
That's correct.
They didn't know how severe the water loss was.
Correct.
And Mr. Castillo was also informed that there was a water loss, correct?
Yes, he knew.
He knew about it, and in fact, he at some point made a comment that the meters should have been checked,
Yes.
right? And do you know whether or not he checked any of the meters?
I think that the commission kind of guided him another way because we said that it couldn't be the meters.
Okay.
You know, that's what the.
And if
commission
we,
thought.
and if we're to go out to the public, okay, and if we're to go out to the public, and the public comes over and asks the current mayor, which is me, we know that there's at least $1.5 million that are missing.
Absolutely.
Who's responsible for them? Who's accountable for the $1.5 million that it's being lost?
Our current city manager, Mr. Milan.
Let me talk to Commissioner Olivares.
Well, I can understand when you put it that way, it's very, very hard to answer that question. But what I'm trying to just point out is that the expectations from Mr. Castillo at the time were not the expectations that we have as this commission, you know, holding him accountable for that. Those were not the expectations.
May not be the expectations of.
Now, the fact that it's an incredible amount. I mean, it's an incredible amount of money, and there's definitely, you know, there definitely should have been accountability. But as his bosses, we did not place that onus on him.
Yeah.
We did not place that responsibility on him to figure it out. We just thought it was old pipes, the infrastructure, you know, we attributed it to a series of other things, you know, that could have been happening.
Yeah, well,
Wrongfully so. I'll admit, now that we know this information.
the main manager within a city is a city manager. I guess that we can all agree on that. And back in 2020, Mr. Noe Castillo was a then city manager. There wasn't anybody else that was above him besides the commission, right?
Yes, sir, you're absolutely
Okay.
right.
And if we go back to the city charter, Article 3, 3.1, the powers and duties of the city manager specifically says, he shall be responsible to the city commission for all administration of all city affairs, which is going to include the departments, fire department, the police department, the IT department technically, but most importantly here, the public utility department. That's what we're dealing here with. There's nobody else that could have addressed that issue but the city manager, back then city manager. And I wish that he would have been here. Perhaps he could have given us a reasonable explanation as to why he didn't go and check out the meters, but he's not here.
Another question, Mayor, and I'm sure that the answer is probably, you know, in the affirmative because we wouldn't be here today. We are suspending him as police chief for something that we are saying that we are looking into that he did as city manager. What this police chief, his, he is now he is still the police chief. Am I correct? I mean,
He's no longer the chief of police, but
no,
how do you suppose that we address the community and we tell them we lost $1.5 million and we're not doing much about it? Who's to be responsible for that? What are we supposed to say and respond to say, hey, we know for a fact that there was a water loss and that there's at least $1.5 million. What did you guys do about that? Who was responsible? Who was the manager? Do we just give somebody a slap on the hand for losing $1.5 million? Is that what you're proposing?
I'm not proposing anything, Mayor. I'm just stating that he was under the auspices of a previous commission who did not place the same onus that you are placing now. The fact that it's $1.5 million minimum is just simply, I mean, that's unacceptable, totally unacceptable. But I just see this as circumstances that were possibly beyond his control. And because he was acting under the direction of the previous commission.
And not only that, but if we just go to, let's say that the commission said X, Y, and Z, okay? We go back to the city charter. What are his duties and obligations? We go to number 5. He shall make an evaluation of all department heads and administrative offices. How do we reconcile that with the fact that there's a loss of at least $1.5 million during his tenure as city manager?
I feel like I'm a witness in a courtroom.
No.
Yeah.
I just want to get some answers. I wish that he was here, but he's not, so you're the second best thing as to what he was, because you were part of the same commission.
And so was Mr. De Leon for a couple of years, so,
Mhm.
yeah. But no, I understand, Mayor, and I'm shocked also by this. And Mr. Cantu would come in and say we're not getting the income that we have, that our rate study says we're supposed to be created. And that's when we started to say, wait a minute, something's not right here, because that rate study, that was set up so that we could start seeing some good income generated.
That's correct.
And that's when we started to see that there was something that definitely not going correctly.
Mr. Milan and Mr. Cantu, for the record, was it rocket science to identify those 3 big accounts?
No,
No, not really.
How long did it take you to identify those 3 accounts?
the
Why
first
did-
thing I did when I was assigned as the interim city manager was look at each department and find the issues, their expenditures, and obviously our losses, and that's when we discovered that.
On an estimate, can you say a week, 2 weeks, a month? To be honest, just for clarification.
To identify them probably took me a day. What I did is I ran the consumption reports for the top 50 consumers over the last 5 years, and went year by year, just looked at the top 3. I noticed that the second one was El South. That one was the top 2 for the first 2 years, and then it dropped to like number 20 for the third year. And then it came back to
So it was a
number 2.
red flag for you?
That was a red flag.
So
and then,
you can say that it took you 1 day?
yeah,
1 day.
and then it's to see the same
After
thing.
you gave the order and you worked
Yes,
with Mr. Cantu and Mr. Eric Flores,
Mr. Flores.
it took you 1 day to
Correct.
identify a huge problem. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's all I needed to know.
Okay. And at some point, Mr. Castillo was given an employment contract, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I think that's the contract that we're seeing on the screen, right?
Yes,
And I think this was signed on March of 2023.
yes, that's an actual renewal contract.
Okay, did he have a contract before this one?
Yes.
And who prepared that contract? Do you know?
I think in 2020 must have been Calixto Villarreal, the attorney,
Okay. And when this contract was prepared, who was the city attorney?
Jay Peña.
Okay. And is Jay Peña the same attorney that's representing Mr. Noe Castillo?
That is correct.
And do you know this contract was actually prepared by Mr. Jay Peña?
I'm not sure on that, but yes, it was revised and it's signed by him,
Okay. And by him, you mean Noe, correct?
by
Jay.
Jay Peña.
It's not signed by
I don't think it was signed by Jay
Okay.
Peña.
I'm sorry, signed by the mayor and city secretary.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know for a fact, and I don't want to create confusion. I don't know for a fact as to whether or not Mr. Jay Peña prepared this contract himself personally. But I think what it is, a fact is that he was the city attorney during the time that this contract was prepared.
If I may, most of the contracts were prepared by his office.
Yeah. But as we sit here today, we don't know for a fact. I think that the only one would know would be him or Mr. Castillo, right?
Correct.
And we don't have that information. And I don't want to make assumptions. I just want to have a clear record as to what we have in our hands and what we can discern and what we cannot. And Ms. Garcia knows? I don't think that
I
she
don't
knows.
know.
You don't know? No. The only thing that we know is that Mr. Peña was the city attorney and that this contract was prepared during the time that he was the city attorney. Whether it was prepared by him, we can't discern that. We don't know that for a fact. But that's all we know. And just for the record as well, we have not, the commission or the city has not authorized Mr. Jay Peña to represent Mr. Noe Castillo in regards to his employment contract. And I say that because we are technically his client as well. And we believe that he's got a conflict of interest, that he should not be involved in the representation of Mr. Noe Castillo dealing with his employment contract. Because once a client, always a client. And the city remains a client of We remain a client of Mr. Jay Peña, and he's representing two clients regarding the same subject matter. And the only way that he could do that is if the city were to consent to the representation of Mr. Noe Castillo, and we have not consented to the representation. Has he called it in at all to see if he's going to come? He's going to join us? Because as we sit here today, we don't have an explanation from Mr. Castillo as to the issue of the water loss. He has not addressed this issue. We were here to address the issue as to whether or not perhaps he was asked by somebody not to do anything. Totally out of his control, but we don't have the benefit of those facts. He provided a letter to the city, but it doesn't provide an explanation. The only thing that it indicates is that he wants for this meeting to be open to the public, which I don't think that it should have been done, because any future employer is always going to be able to come back and review this subject matter as to what's going on with his employment.
Also, to address the community, these have been discussed already in executive session to avoid all these misinformation and misinterpretation. So now we are here. And just to clarify, this is what I'm understanding from you, Commissioner Olivares.
Yes, sir.
You kind of trying to give excuses. This is what the way I see it. Give excuses for Mr. Noe Castillo, and you're blaming it on the previous commission, right?
I wouldn't call them excuses, sir.
The question is, you're blaming it on the previous commission because...
I'm not blaming it on anyone. I'm just saying that
That's what I understood.
the way that he operated was basically based on the expectations that the previous commission set for him.
Okay, you put it on the expectation of the previous commission?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
That's all I wanted to know.
And I think Commissioner Olivares is simply telling us what he was able to discern from the time that he was a commissioner back then and what was going on. You know, the commission might not have been invested in finding out,
That's exactly right, Mayor.
but that doesn't take away that once you become city manager, now you're bound by the city charter. And like I said earlier, perhaps Commissioner Olivares is correct. The commission was not wanting to find out. I don't know. They might have had their reasons. But that doesn't excuse the city manager from performing his duties under the city charter. The city charter indicates that he is the ultimate manager within the city, that he must supervise the departments, that he must hold accountable his employees, that he must be a subordinate to his employer. So even though that I can see that perhaps the commission was a little bit more laid back, that doesn't excuse the conduct of the back then city manager. And it's difficult for me to go along with that because at some point, once the people find out that there's $1.5 million missing, they're going to want answers.
We took an oath, Mayor. We took an oath to defend the community.
They're going to want answers, and somebody has to be held accountable, to be frank. Now, going to further on the charter, the city charter, Mr. Noe Castillo did not have the qualifications to be the city manager.
What are the qualifications?
Specifically that he shall hold a minimum of a bachelor's degree.
Do you know if he had one? Sir?
No, sir, I don't. But I don't think he was city manager. I think his title was deputy.
And
I think that
And
was the way to circumvent the wording.
the whole city administration is bound by the city charter. There's no way around that. You cannot circumvent that. And if somebody wants to enforce the city charter, they can. And the only thing that the city charter states, either you have a city manager, number one, that's qualified, or you have an acting city manager. There's no deputy. And if you're gonna have an acting city manager, he must have the same qualifications.
Besides the bachelor's, Mayor, is there another certificate or requirement to be a city manager?
He must have the experience.
5 years?
5 years of experience.
Any other
in
certificates
public.
needed, Mr. Milan?
I acquired the certified public manager also.
How long do you have it?
Yes, sir.
How long did it take you to get that public administration certificate?
About a year and a half. In addition to the bachelor's degree in government.
The requirement for public service, it could be argued that he did and gained the experience as the chief of police because he had a managerial position within a municipal government field. So I don't think that's going to be a huge issue, but it's subject to argument. What is not subject to argument is that it clearly states a minimum of bachelor's degree. Now, either you have a city manager or you have an acting city manager. Let's assume, and you can only have an active city manager for up to 3 months. You cannot have an acting city manager for more than 3 months. That's what the charter says, clearly stated there. And there's no room in that city charter for a deputy. Whoever came up with that idea was going against the city charter. I mean, there's nothing. There's
So
a
he
word.
was a deputy city manager for how long?
He said November 2020 is what Mr. Milan said.
November 2022.
Yes.
To 2024? Just 6 months
2024.
ago?
Yes.
Almost 4 years
Yes, sir.
with an independent name.
Yeah.
So it was an attempt to circumvent the city charter, but if somebody was to question it at some point.
I believe that it was questioned, Mayor, and I believe that there was a lawsuit that was filed.
I took a look at that lawsuit and I think it was filed by a member of the community. I reviewed everything. And if you look at it, the reason that the judge dismissed the case was not because he addressed the city charter. He didn't want to touch it. I read the order and it was on other grounds. So technically it could have been litigated again. But what happens is those lawsuits coming from a member of the public become expensive and you're funding the litigation for trying to do a public good. It's going to take deep pockets to be able to litigate something like that. And
Now, can I say, when I came in as commissioner,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Castillo was already in that position for over a year.
yes, sir.
And several times in executive session, we discussed the possibility of going out for a city manager, but we saw all the growth and Rio boomed during the last 4 years. All you have to do is look around and look at
Right.
everything that's happened. And we did not want to do anything to take away from that momentum. And it was probably not the right thing to do, but we felt that it was in the best interest of the city because the city was really progressing. There was businesses coming in, record revenues were being generated. So we felt that it was not a good thing to break that streak. But it was several times, it was discussed, that we needed to go out for a city manager. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So we come back to the agenda item and we addressed, because we've gone up a little bit further out, but who's to be held accountable for the $1.5 million? That's my final question.
Ex-city manager, Noe Castillo. In my opinion,
I would have liked to ask that last questions to Mr. Castillo because I really wanted to find out what was going to be his response to that. When we address the public, who do we say that was accountable for the losses of $1.5 million?
his silence is the answer, Mayor, in my opinion. Again, I'm just speaking on my behalf, my opinion. For me, it's very clear the way anybody wants to put it, but this is reality, and we took a note to defend, and you said it on the first meeting, Mayor. I remember clearly that you said that you were going to take this job very serious, and you were going to protect the community dollars to the best of your ability. And that's exactly what you're leading right now here, addressing this community and addressing this issue. So,
And for the record, Mayor, I'm glad that we found this out, and I'm glad that we're taking corrective action, because, I mean, there's just, you know, that shouldn't have happened. That should not have happened. The question that I asked earlier, and I'm gonna ask it again, we're taking action against him in his position as deputy city manager,
Yes, sir.
but we're taking action against him in his role as police chief?
No,
I mean-
that's city manager.
But right now, he was suspended as police chief. He was no longer the city manager. He's not been the city manager since we appointed Mr.
have you seen
Millan.
his contract, sir?
No, sir, I have
Do you
not
have
seen
a
his
copy of the
contract.
contract, Mayor?
No, if,
It's in the packet.
Well, this is the thing. And if you want to look for employment, at all times it says, City herein employs Noe Castillo to serve as both deputy city manager and chief of police for the city. So it's two titles in one. Whether you want to refer to him as chief of police or you want to refer to him as deputy city manager, they're one and the same. So you can see here that it says, it doesn't have an or here, it's an and, meaning both. It's not you're
Okay.
chief of police or city manager. You're chief of police and city manager.
but the fact that he was only doing the chief of police job,
He's still considered the city manager under contract. There's no way around that.
but he was not being considered the city manager of the city
Right.
for the last 6 months.
And if you go to his contract further out, it says that you can reassignment.
So we
So-
reassigned him to chief of police?
Chief of police or
And
chief of police and city manager. So you could technically, he can technically keep the title of city manager without the responsibility if you take it away. But he remains city manager under contract. You see what I mean? So we have the right to reassignment. It says the city reserves the right to acquire changes or reassignment in the scope of work to be performed under this contract.
Okay.
So the reassignment was chief of police only. But that doesn't mean that he's not the city manager anymore. He remains with that title.
I understand. I understand.
So, so right now, Ms. Garcia, today is for the possibility of suspension without pay,
Yes.
and today's hearing, or today's item is not gonna end in a termination, just a suspension?
Suspension.
Okay.
And the item for Castillo was an open session. It covered the public hearing notice pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. He was going to be allowed to speak and present. I did speak with counsel, Mr. Peña, yesterday. He was aware of that. However, the employee still needed to be present, which he was not present.
Right. I mean, if he decided to not speak, that was totally up to him. But as an employee, as the chief of police, he was summoned to be here, and he was not. Obviously, that's being insubordinate to his employer. That's cause for termination as well, in addition to what we have at hand. But we don't have that right now. The only discussion and possible action is regarding the suspension without pay of Mr. Noe Castillo. Anything further from anybody?
thank you, Mr. Leonel, Mr. Eric, Mr. Milan, and everybody that worked investigating and finding this huge problem for our community. And just be assured that this commission is here for you. We'll continue with this plan of action that it's gonna be beneficial for the whole community. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commission.
What are the plans to replace the other meters? Like, I know that I was part of that committee that chose the meters. What are the plans to replace other meters that may be faulty, like residential meters?
Yeah, well, the commission already approved the pilot program, so they're already working on the pilot. We're gonna replace 150 meters, I believe. It takes some time, so I think probably within the next 2 months, we'll have them ready. We'll see
And
how those
eventually
work.
it'll be all 6,000 accounts?
Yes, we're gonna do the pilot program and see how those come out too after the first 2 or 3 months, and then after that, we're gonna, if they do work out fine, we're gonna replace all the 6,000 here.
Okay.
I think we also need to find a way to implement a check system to
Motion
where
and
like some of the basic meter readers, if there's a meter that's reading 0, that has to be
Trigger.
triggered
Yes.
too, yes. This can't happen again.
We're already working on that also.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Okay, so we're gonna finalize with this agenda item, and I need a motion to conclude with this item 2A. Do we have a motion on the floor at this time?
Yes, Mayor, I move motion, the possible action regarding the suspension without pay of our police chief, Noe Castillo, pursuant of the Texas Government Code, Section 55.1.074.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion has been second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
I abstain, Mayor, for the record.
You abstaining?
Yes, I'm abstaining.
Is it abstaining or you're going against it?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Commissioner Leonardo?
Favor.
Okay. Motion carries, and Mr. Noe Castillo is to remain suspended without pay. And,
Is suspended without pay
I'm
today.
sorry?
Is suspended without pay today.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. He was suspended, and from here on forward, suspended without pay, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Effective today.
yes. Moving forward to agenda item number 3, executive session, personnel. At this time, do we have a motion to go into
I
executive
move that
session?
we go to the, we.
Do we have
convene-
anything for executive?
Um, It's going to be the same, essentially.
We don't need to go.
Okay, we don't have any issues pending, Mr. Villa,
No.
regarding executive?
No.
Okay. Well, being that the case, then, I asked that somebody makes a motion for the adjournment of today's meeting.
Can somebody give us the dates of all the events that we have coming up, Mayor?
Just a second.
Before we
Yeah,
adjourn?
just a second. Yeah.
The calendar.
I know it's not on the agenda, but just for informational.
Yeah. Ms.
Yes. Second.
Mayor, Commission, we have several upcoming events. This is a very busy week for the city of Rio Grande. So today, this evening, will be the Parade of Marshal Dinner. We have 4 different categories of individuals that will be recognized at the dinner, so we're hoping that you can all join us. It'll be at 6 p.m. at the Julabe. Tomorrow, we have our official Christmas tree lighting at the Kiosco on Britain Avenue. So that is taking place also at 6 p.m. And a proclamation will be read. We'll have our queens there helping us light up the Christmas tree to really kick off the holiday season. HEB is hosting their annual Feast of Sharing at Ringwood Elementary. This will be taking place on the 5th. So that'll be on Thursday, and then Friday is our annual Christmas lighted parade, and that starts at 7 p.m. on Main Street. So hope everyone can join us for that. I know everyone works really hard on their floats, and the city will have a float there as well. And that parade will kick off our Christmas market taking place at the Triple L building. So it starts also on Friday, right before the parade kicks off. We're still signing up vendors, so if vendors are interested, please come by our office here at EDC. In Suite B.
So we're going to
And-
be having the parade, and then we're going to be having the market.
The market is taking place at the same time, so whereas individuals show up typically early to find a good spot,
Right.
They'll have a place to get something to eat or do a little bit of shopping, so it helps us draw in those individuals that are already on Main Street, and that way they can see the market. And Roel's Photography will be there doing photos with Santa Claus, and from what I hear, they've done a really nice setup for this year, so.
And I was just informed that the market is going to be not just for the parade, but for
All
3 days,
weekend.
correct?
Yes, so it starts off on Friday, and then we'll have it Saturday and Sunday. So it's the first time that we're doing something like this, so we're nervous but excited, and we're hoping that we're able to do more of these markets and that they grow.
It's great to see you guys we're coming together to bring more things like this to the community, more options. So yeah, I'm excited about that also. Can't tell by my face, but I'm excited.
It's gonna be kids and adult friendly, right?
Yes, certainly. It will be. So bring out the family, bring out your neighbors, your suegras, your friends, everybody, come on out and enjoy this. And I feel like the weather is just giving us an impression of winter. I know we're used to the hot weather, but it's giving us the holiday vibe, so. That's what we have for this week. And the library has a few events. Next week, they have their Storybook Christmas on the 11th, and then we'll be planning an employee Christmas gathering as well. So we'll give you all the details on that. Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now, do we,
Move to adjourn?
okay, second,
I second.
motion has been second. All those in favor for adjournment, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.
110.